I don't know what my great crime is this week that you won't return my phone call, but this is pretty shitty of you. It's really shitty of you. I am your mother, and I love you. And every time you need to call and dump on me all the bad things of your job, I sit there and I listen to it because you need a safe place to put that. And when I want to share the good thing, you can't be bothered to call me, and now you're purposely ignoring my phone calls and my texts to rub it in my face, and I don't even know what the fucking crime I committed was. I'm pissed. I'm really pissed at this point. I didn't do anything to deserve this from you. I had been your dumping ground for months while you told me all about all the bad shit in your life, and you never tell me the good stuff, and then you're offended when I think you have a bad attitude. Well, you have a bad attitude because the only thing you tell me about is bad shit. And now you got something good and you won't share it with me.
So that's my mom. I have been no contact with her for almost 6 years now. And I'm going to do my best while I make this video to maintain her anonymity while still sharing this part of my life with you, because my intention is not to hurt her. I'm making this video because I know I'm not the only adult who has made the difficult decision to go no contact with their parents. I used to not understand this, and honestly, I didn't understand this even after I had cut contact with her, because I've found that as time goes on, I'm still learning and realizing things that have been so deeply ingrained in me. And I'll have a conversation with my husband and I'll be like, oh, I think that's because of my mom. He'll be like, yeah, I know. So I'm still learning how her behavior has impacted me. But I used to not understand how people couldn't leave cycles of abuse. It used to boggle my mind. If someone is mistreating you, just leave. That's what I thought. Just leave. It's like, why would you want to stay in a situation like that? And it's because the cycles of abuse are just that. They're cycles. They get you to eventually break the way that they want you to, eventually do the thing that they want. And then they pretend like nothing ever happened. And then you have a period of just really, like, it's great. It is so good. Things are so great. You're happy. You're laughing. You guys are bonding. And they're showering you with love. They're telling you all the ways that you're wonderful. Something happens. And I don't really know what it is that triggers it, but something happens. And then the abuse starts. And it starts small, and it just kind of builds on itself until it's this big thing. And then you find yourself feeling terrible again. With my mom, there was a while there where I was starting to, as an adult, I was starting to set up boundaries. And I was starting to tell her no to things. And what would happen then, as a way to control and manipulate me, she would scream at me. I mean, scream at me, call me names. I mean, just say the most vicious, hurtful things that she could think of, as a way to intimidate or scare me into doing or saying what she wanted. And if that didn't work, she would move on to crying. She would cry and try to guilt me and be sad about the situation, like I was causing her great pain. And if that didn't work, she would just ignore you. She would ice you out for however long she wanted to, days, weeks. And you were confused because you're like, but I thought we were really close. But we're not. She would ignore you. And then one day, when she finally decided she was over it, she would contact you again. And that's how it went for years. My mom would get really mad at me because as a young adult, I was like her financial backup plan. I did my best as a young adult to try to get my family, we were very poor. I grew up on food stamps. We were just poor. And it is what it is. But I knew that I didn't want to be that for the rest of my life. I knew that I wanted to find some financial security. And so I did my best to try to accumulate some savings. And then some emergency would happen. Something would happen where I was the only one who could help her. One time it was my brother had a medical emergency in Tennessee. And so we had to drive down to Tennessee, and I was the only reason we could afford it. Another time was she moved from Tennessee to Florida at one point. They hired a bad moving company that ended up like robbing them blind. So they had, a quarter of the stuff that they ended up moving with. A bunch of it was damaged, and they needed help. So I gave them $1,500. That was all of my money. And stuff like that just always happened. On top of that, she always came up with these like get rich quick schemes, these like really fantastical businesses that, I mean, they weren't businesses. There were no business plans. There were no LLCs. In the state that we're in, you have to file with the Secretary of State's office to like register your business. There was no market research. It was just like a gut feeling. She was just like, this is gonna make us rich. And I was often expected to help fund her start. I was also expected to help her do it even. And my siblings were too. She would get mad at me for asking simple questions. Like, if this is what you want to do, that's great. I don't know if it's worth $10 a unit. You might want to consider dropping that price down. She gets so mad at me. I can't believe you don't believe in me. That is so horrible of you. Why would you believe that? You're a heartless bitch. She called me a heartless bitch a lot. Because I was too practical, I was a heartless bitch, which is just like such a nice thing to hear from your mom as a young woman. Anyway, in this particular instance, I had a very difficult job at the time, and she had a similar job in a different location. And so we would call each other and we would just talk about the job and how difficult it was. And then I got to work a really cool event. Well, this really cool event didn't end until like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't like get home until like 2. My husband and I were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time, and we were long distance, and the event happened to be in the city that he was in. So the next morning, I spent my day with my long distance boyfriend, who I didn't get to see a lot of. She called me. First of all, I slept in, obviously. So she called me like first thing in the morning. I didn't answer. I was asleep. All right, my video cut out, and then I re-recorded it, and it was the worst quality you've ever seen. So I'm re-recording again. Where we left off was she called me, and I was asleep. And then later that day, she called me again, but I was on a date. We were actually at a mini putt course, and so I didn't answer because I was on a date. And I don't like to talk on the phone if I'm like with people. Still to this day, most of my phone calls are done in the car because that's usually the time that I'm by myself. So, and she knew this. So I didn't answer, and that's when she left me this voicemail. And I started falling to pieces on my date because of course I listened to the voicemail, and it was, you heard it was terrible. I was so anxious and so upset about it and felt so much guilt and dread. Like I was, scared's not like the right word, but there was definitely like the fight or flight in me where I was just like, I don't know what to do. My husband talked me down and, reaffirmed that I'm not a terrible person and that it's okay to miss a couple of phone calls. It was ridiculous. About 2 hours later, she left me another voicemail. And I didn't answer because I was like, I can't talk to someone who is going to scream at me like this. Like, I will fall apart. So she leaves me this voicemail, and it's a butt dial. It was not. It was intentional. I believe it was 100% intentional. But she was like sniffling. Like you could hear her like sniffling on the other side of the phone. So she's going like she was crying. I'm like, ma'am, you did not just try to butt dial cry me and guilt me into thinking that I made you cry. That's whatever. That's not that okay. And then the next day, because I was like, I'm not returning your phone call when you do voicemails like that. And this was actually when I started to get a little bolder, and I think it was the beginning of the end for me and our relationship, because she sent me a really nasty text the next day about, how horrible I was and how dare I not answer her phone call, or even just send her a text to let her know I'm okay. And, just ridiculous, heinous things, just the meanest things she could think of. And I took the voicemail, this voicemail, and I sent it to her. I texted it to her, and I said, would you want to talk to this person? And she was pissed, and she ignored me for a couple of weeks. And then one day she reached back out to me, and it was like, everything was fine. Nothing had ever happened, which was typical for her cycle of, she's like, okay, I lost this one, but we'll come back around. We'll try again another time. I think when I became an adult and really started figuring out my independence and my boundaries and all it entails to be an adult, I think that's when she really started to lose it, because she lost that sense of control that she once had over me. And she lived several states away, so she didn't have the ability to kind of sounds so dramatic, to sink her teeth back into me. If she lived close by, she would have been able to convince me to go visit her on a very frequent basis, and that would have really strengthened her hold on me. I'm very lucky that she moved to a different state and that I chose to stay where I was. And I fully believe that if I lived in the same, I think living far away from her saved my life, literally. And it's certainly what contributed to me having the life I have now. But I just got to a point where I was trying to build my adult life, and she was mad at me for doing that. And I knew at that point I was never going to be able to grow and change and develop. And I knew that if I got myself into a place as an adult where she had all of this control over me, that was going to seep into my marriage and into my children's lives. And I didn't want that for myself. I didn't want that to happen. And so that was when I really started to slowly step away from her. There was another instance that happened. This is a story for another day. About a year, well, actually more like 6 months later. And that really sealed the deal. But I just knew I didn't deserve to be talked to that way. No one deserves to be talked to that way. And as a mother now, I cannot imagine treating my children like that. I can't imagine calling them a cold-hearted bitch, or telling them how horrible they are, or trying to guilt them into giving me money for some reason. Or phone calls with her were several hours. It was never just hey, really quick, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great, gotta go. You're the only people in her lives, honestly. We were her best friends. So in some instances, we were her best friends. And in other instances, we were her, wonderfully talented children. And in other instances, we were brats. And in other instances, we were meant to be obedient because we were her kids. It was insane. She wanted all of our successes to be her successes. So anytime we excelled at anything, it was because of her. She would not only take credit for it, but she would start to take advantage of it. My sister's favorite thing to say is that anytime she developed a hobby, my mom would try to monetize it, which was true. And my sister is one of the most talented, naturally talented, gifted people I've ever met. She has more talent in her pinky finger in any area that she wants to do than most people. She's incredibly talented. And my mom takes your talent and or your passion or whatever, and she would try to make it work for her. And if it didn't, it wasn't worth it. It's ridiculous. And I just can't, again, I go back to being a mother now. How do you look at your kids like that? How do you look at your kids and expect so much from them in such a selfish manner? I genuinely think that she thought that we owed her something. And the thing is, as a mother now, my kids don't owe me anything. I owe them everything. And on that note, I post new videos every Sunday. I post on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts and Facebook. And you can like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell to know when I'm posting. And just know that if you go through something like this, I know how difficult it is. It is one of the hardest things you'll ever do to go no contact with a toxic parent. Incredibly, incredibly difficult. I keep this voicemail to remind me why I did it. And I have to listen to it less and less throughout the years. So it does get easier. But I'd love to hear your stories.